Welcome to this special conversation on the Nation Leadership Forum. Actually, I should clarify, this is a mashup between Business Redefined and the Nation Leadership Forum. As always, your platform which creates the interface between the public-private sectors and you and I, that's the public, to bring issues of national importance to our discussion. And tonight, being the 27th of June 2023, this is the World MSME Day, a very special day for a special category of businesses in any market across the world, especially frontier markets like Kenya. And this year, it is themed around women and youth and how to unlock opportunities and bolster resilience. And we shall be delving into a conversation on digital payments and MSMEs and how they can be a catalyst for formal financial inclusion of these businesses, which drive and are the workhorse of many economies, Kenya included. To do this, I am joined on set with Sharia Ali, who is a country manager for East Africa at MasterCard. I'm also joined by Mary Ngeshu, director for MSMEs and Startups, that is at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. I'm joined also by Dennis Volemi, who's the Chief Information and Digital Officer at Diamond Trust Bank, that's DTB. And finally, Kasim Were is also joining us from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where he heads up a lot of issues around trade research. Lady and gentlemen, delighted to have you on set. Let me just start off with Sharia Ali to my right here. Sharia, when you hear about the conversation of the World MSME Day and the focus being placed on how to bolster resilience for businesses led by women and youth, why is this important and what comes to mind for you?
Well, firstly, I want to congratulate and celebrate this MSME Day for the 7.4 million MSMEs in Kenya. You have suffered a lot. When we look at the digital divide that became apparent during COVID versus then getting out of COVID and having a supply chain disruption globally, followed by lack of access to credit, which is uncollateralized, lack of access to marketplace, not having been prepared before COVID when online was a requirement during COVID to thrive, you survived, you persevered. So credit to your resilience. And I want to really congratulate all MSMEs who form the backbone of Kenya's economy. 80% of the businesses in Kenya are MSMEs. And therefore, it is only incumbent upon all of us to come together, look at the real pain points, whether it's access to credit, whether it's access to marketplace, whether it's providing digital payment options at a low cost. We have to come together and handhold you along the way. And what better place to have this conversation than in Kenya, where mobile money has actually shown us the way how you actually immerse yourself and go all the way down to the base of the pyramid and enable payments. So that is why today is a very important day for all of us.
Mary Ngeshu, let me get your thoughts on this, especially being the lady on the panel and being a business person by yourself. Just give us some thoughts around why this day is especially significant for you.
Thank you very much. I think today is a day that we are recognizing that MSMEs are contributing to the economy for Kenya and globally. In Kenya, you look and you see a lot of businesses are in the space where you'd call the MSMEs. And at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, we have taken action of being the voice for the SME. And this is why I sit in as the director for SME. The Kenya Private Sector Alliance is the apex body for the private sector. It's the voice of the SME. We push advocacy, we work with the government to create an enabling environment for the businesses, including the SMEs. What we are trying to do at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance is to help SMEs to scale up. So our focus is on scaling up, and today we are celebrating the efforts that the SMEs have put in place and welcoming them to Kenya Private Sector Alliance so that we can be able to come up with what is required so that we can lobby and have conversations with the government so that we can create an enabling environment. At the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, we are working closely. The government has many initiatives for SMEs to scale, but SMEs do not have that information. So at the private sector, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, what we are trying to do is to pass that information to enable the SMEs to understand what is required for them in their businesses, to comply with the regulatory so that they can be able to embrace the digital payments, to access different markets, to access the different opportunities are there. I think we celebrate the SMEs and we welcome them to join the Kenya Private Sector Alliance so that we can be the voice for the SMEs in the country.
Thank you very much, Mary, for that. Let me come over to Dennis here. And Mary has spoken about the scalability of MSMEs, and one of the issues which MSMEs will tell you about that being a challenge is that they are not within the formal financial inclusion net because of challenges like collateralization. You sit in the financial services space. What do you think is being done to change this narrative?
Yeah, so, and you're right, the biggest reason that SMEs have traditionally struggled to get access to credit is really the information asymmetry that exists about what they're doing as businesses and the type of information that the bank requires to provide an non-collateralized credit to them. And specifically what the financial services industry is doing as a whole, and specifically at DTB, we are encouraging MSMEs to adopt digital payments, because digital payments have got the necessary gap fillers between the information asymmetry that about their businesses and what the bank requires. So through digital payments, SMEs are able to then get the necessary transaction history that can be used to do credit appraisal, to determine their credit worthiness. This history that the banks would get from the credit, essentially the digital payment history, would enable banks to provide access to credit to MSMEs. Secondly, again, the fact that SMEs use digital payments allows the bank to have visibility of cash flows. So in form of determining whether an SME would have a continued credit line, utilizing digital payments allows banks to have that visibility of the necessary cash flows that they have to be able to service their debt. And finally, one of the biggest problems where people, rather SMEs, default is sometimes their inability to predict their cash flows. So digital payments provides them the necessary information in terms of being able to predict how their cash flows are coming through, and therefore they're able to manage their repayments to the banks better. And this, at large, will continue to provide them access to credit.
Thank you, Dennis, for that. Let me come to Kasim. And Kasim, really just to give us your introductory thoughts. As a person who sits within an umbrella body, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, how are you supporting MSMEs to navigate, especially in an environment of a multiplicity of shocks like we are right now?
Thank you very much for welcoming the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry to this very important conversation. As you've been able to be shared with, we are a membership organization which cuts across the small, medium, and large enterprises as our members. Chamber has digital programs ranging from programs that were supposed to be able to help SMEs be able to be resilient during the COVID times. We also had programs that are supporting SMEs post-COVID. And we are saying that the Chamber is mandated to issue certificates of origin, which have been automated so that people can be able to access digitally. Initially, it used to be very tough. You have to travel from Naivasha, come to Nairobi, get a form, go back, fill, then come back again, and then back and forth if there are errors. But right now, you just do digital filling and digital payment for those certificate of origin. We've also been able to come up with digital lending programs during the COVID times, and I'm glad my colleague is here from MasterCard. I think we worked closely to ensure that we were able to lend people at interest-free during the COVID times so that they can be sustainable in the long run. We now have on the phase 2 of the program, which we're hoping that will reach over 500,000 SMEs on a similar arrangement. We have also come up with marketing programs so that we can reduce the movement of SMEs into the market, the logistics, called the iSoko platform, which is quite key in terms of reaching the SMEs directly. So we have practical solutions to the SMEs, which form the backbone of our operations. We've created a special category for the Juakal sector so that they can be able to be resilient during the COVID times. And I think the biggest category of members we have ever had is from that sector, which we hope that we can be able to formalize in the process.
Okay. Let me come back to Sharia Ali. And as you've had, one of the recurring themes is COVID-19 and what it has meant, especially for MSMEs. And one of the things it did was to really accelerate the uptake of digital payments. When you look at the landscape as it is right now, we can't really say we are post-COVID, but at least we are out of the woods, if I could say. How is the level of uptake and the stickiness of the traction we saw back then?
Thank you. I think that's a very important question because we have to look at history in reference to time. Now, 80% of the economy is sitting on the backbone, which is the MSMEs. 85% of people surveyed in Africa said that they want to try a new digital payments technology. This is not coming on the back of a small survey. MasterCard runs actually a few indexes every year, which includes the New Payments Index, where we look for adoption rates. We look for what the customers are expecting for the future. We also have the MasterCard Index for Women Entrepreneurs, where we study what are the challenges that women entrepreneurs are facing and how are they looking at adopting new technologies to solve for the pain points they have. The Women Entrepreneur Index this year showed that Botswana, Ghana, and Uganda are at the top of the list at 38% roughly on average women entrepreneurs versus men. So this is a wealth of information that we base then our strategy, our customer value proposition, so that it actually addresses the pain points that the customers are facing post-COVID. We also look into the programs we have launched with Jazaduka. We're working with KCB, Unilever, Coral Action BV, where we are providing credit. And I'm delighted to report that the credit lines on that program have grown over 2 billion shillings, which is monumental. And the growth has accelerated a very steep curve in 2022 and 2023. Similarly, FarmPass is another program where we digitalize the quality inputs that we have to feed into the farmers, the access to marketplace so that it's easier for them to get a good and fair price, and in the process create the data points that Dennis has very rightly pointed out, which the bank needs to underwrite with minimum or no collateral. So as we see that number of farmers are going from 600,000 to crossing 1 million this year, we are extremely optimistic that this is the right path. We digitize, we enable access to credit, we enable access to marketplace, and I believe with that we will see the GDP growth rates, which we rightly deserve it in this part of the world, to cross 6 to 7% and more over time.
Sharia, before I let you go, you've spoken a lot about data, and of course, in this present environment, one of the issues which always comes up is, what about the question of data security? How do you safeguard this? How do you ensure that you're protecting the data here?
That's a great question. So I think whether it's digital money or whether it's cash, the risks are almost equivalent there. Now, if you look at digital money, $165 billion of digital transactions took place in Africa. The fraud rate on that is $3 billion, so which is less than 2%. Now, as digitalization spreads, whether it's mobile money or whether it's account payments or whether it's card payments, the fraudsters are continuing to do their hard work. But we have some great fighters on the good side of history. And in MasterCard, we have come up with a host of toolkits, some of which are free. So Global Cyber Alliance and MasterCard have put out a cyber readiness support free a toolkit, which SMEs can actually enable and check for the basics on security, on cybersecurity, and tick mark those boxes. It includes authentication, it includes a host of other, how to manage your data, how to install new software updates, how to take care of phishing, a few other things. That's a free solution. Now, we also have other solutions where we have looked at behavioral biometrics in the shape of New Data, a company we recently bought. And that is the next generation. As commerce moves on to the mobile, the form factor of choice is mobile. And with New Data, we are able to use your behavioral biometrics as to how do you normally hold a phone when you do a transaction? What kind of phone do you use? Where are you normally found in terms of doing your transactions on your phone, and where this is transaction? So what we do is we do a transaction risk scoring profile there. And that gives the banks or any institution who is actually processing that transaction to decide whether they want to continue with that transaction or not, and also understand the risks involved. So we believe that we are going to continue to stay one step ahead Every time fraud rears its head, we will have the tools to equip our SMEs to feel safe.
Being ahead of the curve, very important point there, Sharia. Let me come to Mary Ngeshu, and the question here is, as a person who runs a business, and not just one for that matter,
Yes.
what's your experience in terms of how digital payments actually change the efficiencies within your business?
Now, I think the efficiency will change because you be able to complete the transactions as fast, but you have also talked about the security to uptake that. I'll look into where I have no enough information, then I will shy away from doing the digital pay. And one of the things that we're doing at KEPSA is, again, to look into, get the insights, and we're able to pass that information for the SMEs. I will say it will require me to every day listen to the different players in the market, to even weigh who is giving better services, who is cheaper, because it will come up with a cost, to help me make that decision. But despite all those, if I'm doing a transaction, especially maybe with a client who is a close border, it's easy for them to complete that transaction. Look into even other payment like through M-Pesa. These days, I would say the biggest chunk of my business, because I'm working with SMEs, we are transacting through mobile money. And transactions are easy because somebody will come in, it's not a lot of money, you have your mobile money and you're able to pay, and immediately my team are able to confirm that you've done the payment, and we're able to give you your goods. Then we also are not exposed to the insecurity of handling a lot of cash in the business environment, so my team are secure, and we're able to grow our business, and we can transact as much as possible because you're using the digital pay. You look during the COVID time, and you remember there was a lot of, we don't handle cash because we believed that COVID, there's a lot of whether jams or whatever it is that you call them, that you can trust through handling cash, and digital payment came in handy. Whether it is again through mobile money or transaction of cards or online payments. We also changed into a lot of e-commerce. And if I'm doing an e-commerce transaction and I need to complete, then the digital pay will come in. We are also selling through Facebook, through Instagram, and you need to complete that transaction through pay. So in my business, every day we are using this digital pay. It is something that a lot of SMEs also have embraced, but it also comes now with those challenges that I've talked about at cost. And what we try to do at KEPSA is to look into how do we lobby so that there are good policies and they can allow transaction to be cheaper. If you remember, during COVID also, the government was able to reduce some levies so that the SMEs can be able to do transaction through the digital platform. So efficiency, I think it's easy way to complete a transaction. It's secure because it removes you from that insecurity of handling cash. And I think those are some of the benefits that I get in my business through digital pay.
Thanks for that, Mary. And I know, Dennis, you touched on this earlier, but someone is watching this and wondering, to what extent do digital payments then help de-risk lending to MSMEs? We've always had that financial services firms are extremely worried of the risk profile of MSMEs, but how would digital payments help to change this? I know you touched a bit on this already, but just flesh it out more.
Yeah, so really more in terms of the amount of data that the footprint for digital transactions leaves as far as the SME is concerned. One, in terms of history, there isn't enough knowledge you can get about a business other than looking at their performance over a long period of time. So that history of digital payments, or basically their financial flows, both incoming and outgoing payment, is able to give you a sense of how the business is performing, and therefore as a bank, even though there isn't a credit history with the SME, you then get comfort to be able to extend credit to them. I think I talked a little bit about visibility of cash flows, helping not just the SME but also the bank getting assurance that as they continue to service their facility, that the SME indeed has the capacity to continue to get more credit lines and expand and grow. Yeah, so I think by and large, from a de-risking perspective, that's what we're looking at. Other than, of course, the efficiencies that come with digital payments, allowing the SMEs not just to have to reduce their costs of handling paper, managing cash, but also ability for them to scale. If you think about post-COVID, a lot of people have gotten very comfortable transacting digitally, and the only way to service such customers is to be able to accept digital payments. So that helps them to grow. Also, the trade routes are beginning to open in Africa. That's a potential expansion possibility for these SMEs, but they need to have built the necessary integrations and ecosystems to accept digital payments so that they can take advantage of those opportunities to grow.
Okay. Yeah. I'd like us to talk a little bit about capacity development for MSMEs. And let me start with the chamber here. So what are some of the initiatives, programs you are undertaking, especially in terms of getting MSMEs to be ready for these digital payment solutions?
Thank you very much. I think I forgot to mention to you that the chamber has a new president called Dr. Ruto. When he arrived at the office, coincidentally, the head of state is Dr. Ruto, and the the president for Kenya National Chamber of Commerce is called Dr. Ruto. When he arrived at the office, the first thing he said, I don't want to see papers, I want everything digitized. I think that was his first statement to me. I was acting as the CEO at that time, a week ago. And the chamber in its operations has decided that they would wish to go digital. First, they have decided that since it's a membership organization, they should be digitizing membership, first of all, using the CRM program. And so all the membership activities will be done online, including being given a certificate at the end of the day. Secondly, they are moving to partner with banks because Chamber deals with international trade mostly. And they are moving towards having partnership with banks. We have signed an MOU with KCB, which has programs like the digital overdraft, the retailer finance, Lipana KCB. And then yesterday, I also had a very interesting visit to UBA Bank. And they showed me very interesting programs which are actually going to be very good in terms of international trade. The AfriCash program, they had the Connect, Uber Connect, which is going to be able to make sure that when you are transacting in the African continent or globally, because they have branches globally, you could be able to make payments through their bank without necessarily having a bank account. So I think we are preparing these SMEs by inviting these partners of ours, including DTB is one of our members, to share packages that they have that can be able to facilitate trade. And we are hoping that through this, we could be able to reach as many as possible. And we are also saying that SMEs who cannot be able to reach the markets, we have a platform which is managed by the chamber called the iSoko platform. Yeah. They can be able to put their products there, be able to do transactions, and also be able to make payments online when you are progressing. One thing I want to mention is that on my desk, I have quite a number of SMEs who have tried to circumvent digital payments, and they are in much more trouble. Yeah. They have lost millions and millions. And so the letters of credit from the bank, their digital payment program will save them all this trouble because they have to confirm the customer on the other side before they do any payment. So it's something that people have to embrace because, as my colleague from KEPSA said, it is actually visible, you can do traceability, you can be able to connect to the others, you can cut on cost, but there's that illusion that is expensive, which is not true. And we are working with KRA as a membership organization to make sure that everybody knows that when they go to look for, to make sure that they formalize these SMEs, it's not about looking for taxation. It's about also keeping them safe from the outside world. And every Thursday they have a training.
All right.
Thank you.
We have 4 minutes to a break, and I want Sharia Ali to close this section one for us. Kasim has mentioned something very important, that there is an illusion that the cost for digital payments is high. Could you give us more flavor into this, Sharia? And sure. Is it a misperception out there?
I think it's a grave misperception, but I think the issue is not with what we can see, it's the issue with what we can't see. If we baseline the cost of cash, so how many of us think when handling cash that there's actually a cost to go and procure cash? There is a cost to actually secure cash. There's a cost to transport cash. There's a cost to disperse cash. And a country whatever their GDP is, the World Bank research shows that 3%, anywhere between 2 and 3% of that GDP is the cost of managing just cash. Now, with $100 billion of GDP, if we could free up $2 to $3 billion, well, this is an ideal concept. But if we could even release a portion of that, that's a lot of money that could go in other investments. Now, if we narrow it down to an MSME, the MSME, does not have a factorization for that kind of cost of managing cash. At the same time, the digital way of doing transactions is very upfront. It's transparent. You will know your cost of your transaction upfront. So that's the baseline. Now, if we build on that baseline, what is the issue? The issue is, are we as stakeholders in the ecosystem, are we coming together to give you low-cost acceptance? And this is a debatable topic. Whatever is mobile money's low-cost benchmark, and banks actually take it lower? Can MasterCard enable QRs, tap on phone, other technologies which are lower cost and enable easier acceptance both online and physically present, digitally, or offline, like we do in the case of FarmPass, where it's a closed-loop offline network and we enable transactions at a fraction, a margin of the normal cost of a digital transaction. So there's a need for us to collectively look at the cost dynamics of the transaction, compare it to what would otherwise be inefficiencies of cash, and then take a decision as an MSME, what is the right thing for me as an MSME. Again, going back to Dennis's point, data is only collected on the back of digital transactions, which are data points. And if we want to get rid of collateralized credit, or at least reduce it or minimize it, we have to have adequate data to base our underwriting decisions on.
Right, and that point by Sharia Ali takes us to a very quick break. We shall be right back with a lot more on this conversation, including the question of what do digital payments have to do in terms of plugging in MSMEs into international value chains. Stay tuned.
Wing of bat and foot of crow, eagle's egg and seagull's toe, bits of wasp and ooze of fly. Soon I too can reach the sky.
Mum, are you still busy cooking?
You are welcome to come and help me a bit, Freya.
Oh, Mother, there's no helping you anymore, don't you know? Red Bull gives you wings.
Safaricom Business is enabling organizations to connect, protect, enable, and transform their businesses by leveraging technology and innovation.
Through technology, we've been able to communicate, keep records, store our data, reach our customers, run our logistics. The future for both Space and Style and Safaricom looks quite promising. We are now looking to go into, digital selling to expand and improve our services, and also ensure that our factory and manufacturing processes are actually quite sustainable.
Secure Fiber offers your business a fast, dependable, and secure fiber internet connection. Visit www.business.safaricom.co.ke to explore our range of plans tailored to meet your business needs.
New Sensodyne Repair and Protect with Deep Repair. It's a huge game changer for me. The science is pretty amazing because it really goes deep inside the tooth and repairs tooth sensitivity. I am a happy patient. I will be able to go back to the things that I enjoy eating the most. The science is there. It's going to improve the quality of my life in a big way. The new Sensodyne Repair and Protect with Deep Repair.
Najua nyama hiyo inaonekana laini, lakini pengine si hivyo wakati unakiungulia. Unakumbuka kilichofanyika wakati uliopita? Unajijaribu mwenyewe. Nilijaribu kukujali. Acha tuone umbali utakaofika. Unaona sasa kiungulia kinakupelekaje? Ona sasa, kinakuchoma.
Usiugue katika hali yoyote. Ino inafanya kazi haraka kuondoa dalili 6 za kiungulia.
You do know you said all of that out loud, right?
Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
Jumini get actress. Nadhani sina insecurities. Kuna body parts kwa itaka zionekane. Lakini after kutumia nice and lovely flawless bio body oil, results nazo. Nime reclaim my confidence na nika fade away my fears. New nice and lovely flawless bio body oil. Imeboreshwa na 4 natural oils. Kupunguza stretch marks, ku-even skin tone, na ku-improve firmness. Flawless is a feeling. 9 out of 10 Kenyan women agree it worked for them.
Do not hold back in any situation. Eno gets to work on the 6 symptoms of heartburn fast.
You do know you said all of that out loud, right?
If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
Get the Ballin' Twister box for only $7.50. NBA, KFC, balling all day.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to this special conversation on the Nation Leadership Forum, where we are delving into matters of digital payments and micro, small and medium-sized business ventures, a critical part of this economy. And I'm just sampling some of your questions online. And let me throw this question to Sharia Ali. Someone is asking, what is the role of digital payments when it comes to integrating MSMEs into regional and international value chains?
I think digital payments are critical facilitator, enabler of integrating into regional and international value chains. For example, today, an average MSME who is dependent on a supply chain which is originating in China would have to go through, or informal methods using WeChat and other agents in the middle to actually secure the goods or services that they need. Now, if we were to streamline that, and MasterCard has a very nice service called the cross-border service, which plugs into 200 plus countries in the world, enables instant payments. It is at a fraction of the cost of the current incumbent, and it benefits not only the MSME but the bank in terms of the transparency and speed with which the transaction happens. It also creates a record for that transaction because it's going through a formal network. So we're working with multiple banks in the market today to enable that. And just before the show, Mary and I were discussing the same thing, that how can, yes, we have the AFCFTA, we have the PAPs, but really, do we need to be dependent or do we need to wait for those to go live? We could actually utilize the cross-border services in multiple countries and create these networks which then can be built upon. So definitely, digital payments are essential for enabling and supporting the international and regional supply chains.
Kasim, you wanted to add on to that?
Yes, I just want to build on what the head of state was commenting recently about payments. You are doing business with Djibouti and you want to make payments in US dollars. What is happening is that the digital payment is enabling us to be able to do business. We have the Afri-Exim Bank, which can be able to pay in local currency. We have the UBA Bank right now, which is doing the international trade with the local currency. You can be able to pay and be able to transact business. I don't know what DTB is doing. Possibly he will share with us. Maybe they also have a package. But KCB has a package. And I think that's where we are heading because it has been a hindrance to trade by the SMEs. I can give you an example. Kenya, if you went to Uganda, you can buy shoes, bag, and all that things from just from the local market using Kenyan currency. Yeah. But walk to Kikomba here with Ugandan currency and purport to want to buy shoe or anything, you'll be told, no, stop. But if you are coming from Uganda and you want to pay through M-Pesa, you'll be allowed and you'll be able to do the transaction. So the cross-border trade is enabled by digital payment because it is the easier way and secure and efficient. Yeah. Thank you.
Mary?
Add into that.
Sure.
When you look at the international value chain, there are huge opportunities for the SMEs in either subcontracting, that maybe a multinational will be able to subcontract an SME for a service. You can also be supplying whether they are raw materials, and if you look in a value chain, maybe like in the agro processing, a lot of our SMEs are small farm holders, and they are having raw materials in small quantities, and sometimes also they want to aggregate maybe with a bigger network so that they can be able to access the market. And when then it comes into those transactions, they don't have capacity of a lot of working capital, cash flow, so they require their money now. As we are saying, the transaction needs to be completed and they need to get to be paid. So if they are able to integrate themselves with the regional or international value chain, whether they are supplying the raw materials or they are subcontracting, then if they have an easy way of understanding and knowing that they can be able to get their payment, then the opportunity of them embracing that becomes quite high.
Okay. Dennis, help me answer this question. And I've got this question from about 3 viewers, and they're asking, we have seen this growing adoption of QR payment systems. Should MSMEs go this route? What are the benefits, the pros and cons?
Yeah, so maybe let's talk about what they are exactly. So the QR codes, essentially, it's a low-cost payments acquiring infrastructure that's essentially being built. Initially, it was being built by different players, but what the industry has come together through the support from the central bank, MasterCard and Visa, is to create a national standard for QR codes. And the essence really is to try and get rid of the clutter. You know, when you go to the retail shops and you see the clutter there where there are many different payment options, pay bill from every single wallet provider, and POS is essentially a POS device for every single bank that does acquiring. The essence of the QR code project is to simplify payments acquiring at the point of transaction. So what this will mean, essentially once this is rolled out, because this is an ongoing process and DTB is a big part of the project, is every merchant will be able to receive and accept payments from every store value. So it doesn't matter whether you're paying from mobile money or from a bank account, whether you're using a card or using your mobile app. As a merchant, you'll be able to accept those payments regardless of whether you're from Airtel, Safaricom, Telcom Kenya, or a different bank. So that's going to unify that experience for the customers paying, and for the merchants, it's going to make your life easier. So for SMEs, I'd really encourage for them to pay close attention to this and adopt, because it's going to ensure that from an inclusion perspective, essentially it doesn't matter who is paying you, they can pay you with that QR code from whatever store value.
Sure, yes.
Would like to compliment what Dennis has just brought to life, because what is one of the bigger challenges in Kenya right now? We have the forex reserves, which are under stress. And so while we were designing this QR, very rightly under the leadership of Central Bank of Kenya in terms of setting up the standards, it was also critical that we looked at what is in the interest of the country, and we said, how about within that QR or quick response code, we place or make a provision for a service called Pay by Link. What that does is that even if I am not actually a Kenyan, I'm coming from abroad and I'm bringing a card from Europe, US, wherever else, I can bring that, I can still scan that QR. Instead of a straight through transaction, it'll take me to a page, which is basically the pay by link functionality, where you then make the payment through a gateway. So what that enables is that if we were to disseminate these QRs to millions of acceptance points, that means that a foreigner or tourist who's coming into the country should be then able to not need to go and transfer between wallets, etc., but they can still come and use their original form factor that they're bringing from the country they're coming from and make a payment seamlessly through that same single clutterless Kenya QR.
I see. Ladies and gentlemen, let's switch gears and talk about the policy environment. And let me start with Mary Ngeshu. What's your overall assessment of the policy environment as it stands in terms of the degree to which it facilitates adoption of digital payments?
Well, and before I answer the policy, I want to ask the question about the QR code.
Please go ahead.
On behalf of the SMEs,
yes.
I'm then imagining that if you can be able to scan and you can deal with different digital pay providers, and currently what you see is that all of them, they are charging different charges. And then think that it will be important that they're able to harmonize. We have a similar fee for the SME, or I would want to hear from the experts how would that go?
Let's go with Dennis
yes.
first, then we come to Sharia.
Yeah, so remember under the national payment strategy that was launched in February last year by the central bank, against which some of these initiatives at the QR code are built up of.
Yeah.
Part of the big focus areas of that strategy is to promote inclusion. And you cannot talk about inclusion if you don't address the cost challenges that the SMEs are talking about. So there isn't an immediate path to ensure that you pay a single fee regardless of who your bank is and who is paying you. But there's a path. There's a path to ensure that there's inclusion, and the standardization of the collections infrastructure is a first step towards that. Yeah.
Sharia, very quickly.
So I think that's a very important question, and one that we have to solve together. It's not a single party capability to resolve this market level policy matter. Now, if we look at our neighbors in Tanzania, where QR was rolled out a bit earlier, it had the similar challenges around, uniformity in terms of pricing, but then the ecosystem players were brought together, and there's always the key 4 or 5 players. If you look at this market, you'll be looking at, let's say, Safaricom and the M-Pesa acceptance points. You'll be looking at Equity Tel One, which is already in 900,000 plus acceptance points versus 1 million, I think, in Safaricom, and it's really catching up. And then there are a host of other new entrants who are actually coming up with disruptive plays for QR. So, and I'm really excited actually about the Astra DTBX factory that my friend Dennis is going live with, because that will enable a lot of that dissemination by enabling PSPs. Now, in this matter, what is critical is that we look at what is the current price point. Because if you're not taking to the merchant a standardized, interoperable QR, which is matching or is more expensive than the current status quo price point, it won't work. It has to be priced competitively lower. Why? Because there's no machine involved, there is no phones involved, it's a QR, it's a read-through, the cost of acquiring is less, and therefore we must ensure that as we not look at our own closed loop issues, we actually step back, look at Kenya together, and decide a price point that enables that MSME to grow his or her digital acceptance footprint.
Mary, please take the question on the policy now.
Thank you. Now, I think those are some of the policies that we are talking about. Yeah. That even before we embrace the QR code, we need to come up with policy that really give or unlock the barriers for the SME, whether it is the policies for pricing, to harmonize so that the SMEs can be able to tap into such technology. There are also other policies that we need to look into and understand what are the actual challenges of the SME. The actual challenges for the SME could be minimal into that cent that you're talking about, and maybe a bigger sized business would be able to work in that. Are there policies that the government can come up to even give incentives for the providers so that they can be able to either waive for the SMEs to be able to embrace on that? Look into also the infrastructure. Yeah. And you look at how it is that then a digital partner or a digital pay provider would look into how they would let the SME before they take them to access that. They will call it the know your customer processes and all that. How can we be able to come up with policy and enable them to at least be more flexible when they are looking into the space of SME? I think those are some of the policies that are important for uptake.
Yeah, for me, I want to look at it from the practical point of view. Where I come from the rural areas, I've been serving Kakamega County as the CEC in charge of trade. And before I joined the chamber, we had many complaints whereby I think the staff who are working in the digital space would leak the background activities that take place for items like the QR code to take place. A guy passes near your M-Pesa point, and all your money in your till is gone.
Yeah.
It was famously in a place called Matungu. There was a place called Mumias East, where I come from, which is my home. Those activities were very famous. In fact, they labeled those guys wash guys. They will pass by your shop, and that is good. So we are saying that the data protection has to be there. And for example, what the chamber has done since the new president came in is to have that data protection compliance put in place so that they are a control of it. And also we are looking at it like, in terms of policy, we need to also work with the regulator to see if the banks can be regulated. I'm talking on behalf of the business people. I was talking to him before he came in. DTB charges, I don't know how much, KCB, another transaction. So can we be able to cap them so that they can charge between these bands, because they are all over. Yeah. And when the mid-year comes, you hear them declare supernormal profits. We have done 41.4 billion shillings. So we are hoping that we should be able to have a policy so that we can cap them. Then patent innovations, possibly whatever he's talking about is very, very interesting. And so a policy around capping those innovations are quite good. And then disseminating the information and enforcement of the data protection policy 2018 and the regulations that came in 2021. People do not know about them. In fact, even me, I was reading about them when you called me to the show. So I believe that if I was reading about them when you called me to the show, then there are many other people out there who honestly do not understand these things. So we are saying that we need to have a mechanism on how these policies could be disseminated to an NG so that they can get to understand what they are doing.
Policy dissemination, and Kasim, I should remind you, this market actually has an experiment with the capping of banks, and we saw a very perverse outcome. But let me allow Dennis to come in at that point.
No, I think I must. So I think they've covered a lot of the areas, but I think three main important policy areas that require a lot of focus for digital payments to grow. One is on, I think we've talked a little bit about interoperability and standardization. Yeah. So that's very critical, because it allows many players to come in, and you can only digitize an economy if you have a lot more players and not just two players. So interoperability is key. The government needs to ensure that it is possible. No payment service is launched that doesn't allow interoperability across the industry. So that's very critical. Number two is support for partnerships. And I think I'll talk a little bit here about what we're doing at DTB. So we strongly believe that you can't grow this market by yourself. So what we've done at DTB, using a platform that we just launched called Astra, is to create a platform where we're able to extend what we're calling banking as a service to different third parties. So we're looking to extend our capability to other fintechs that offer niche services. So you talk about supporting education or health. As a bank, we can't solve problems in health and specifically in education, but we've got people who are focused in that sector. So what we're saying is we want to provide you the financial services rails that you can connect to us and be able to offer those niche services in that area that you want to focus on through us. So I think a focus on encouraging partnerships is critical, because it helps us ensure that each area of the economy is sufficiently addressed.
Sherry, just very quickly before you take a break.
I think standardization is critical today. For example, if you go to a grocery shop, you know, there is something called the CVM limit on the card. So when you want to, for example, you're in a hurry, you want to go get your groceries done or pay for a fee, or you know, you're on a toll plaza and you want to just wave your phone and make a payment. These CVM limits today are a bit disproportionate across the industry. We need to have standardization for our customers so that everybody knows with confidence that I can go anywhere as long as they have the wave sign on their terminal of acceptance. They can just tap and go. No putting of pins and OTPs and all of that. You know, you can actually add value to your life. You can have pleasurable experiences going through the same daily routine that you do today, but over there you have to wait in line, and so it slows you down. Now, this is just one example of standardization. The QR standardization is another big one, and I think, yes, it's something that has just gone into motion. We have just set up the standards, but if it's collectively, like Mary pointed out, managed well, and maybe a regulator has a big role in bringing all the parties together and driving this, I think we'll be seeing a totally different payment landscape 5 years from now. This has the power to disrupt the current ecosystem and upgrade the customer experience. So I believe these two things in terms of interoperability and standardization are critical for us to keep at the center. And then proliferation of the banking and financial services through ag tech, insurtech, health tech, education tech. These enablements through fintechs, bringing them down to the MSMEs, so that, because even with this Farm Pass solution that we have, it is Coral Action BV, which is a fintech, which handholds the SME, shows them how the data has to be captured, how the bank will actually see the data, how your cash flows are being managed. So you need that hand-holding initially, and once the engine is running, then it goes on autopilot. But initially, there has to be investment from all of us.
Thanks, Sharia. And in case Sharia lost you when he mentioned OTP, that's one-time password. That's a very common occurrence right now in any of our transactions on the digital platforms. We take another quick break. We shall be right back with the tail end of this conversation, sampling a lot more of your questions, including some of the inspiration you want from Mary Ngesho, so stay tuned for that. And welcome to the tail end of this conversation on MSMEs and digital payments. We are looking at how to unlock efficiencies and bolster resilience. And this section will be quite fast because we're getting to the tail end of it. So let me start with the Sharia Ali. There's a question here, and someone is asking, debit and credit cards, would you recommend this for MSMEs? Sharia, take it away.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great question. Let's start with the baseline. The baseline is 11 million debit cards, less than 1 million credit cards. That's the structure as per Central Bank of Kenya reporting in Kenya. Now, if you look at the globe, you have billions of credit cards. So credit as a behavior is a very natural requirement of any successful, thriving economy. It is the responsible management of credit that we have to enable and ensure through, it's critical to handhold, showcase what are the best practices of utilizing credit. If we think about the net disposable income today, it's going down. We all know it, right? We'll have lesser money to spend, and therefore, if an instrument like a credit card gives us 40 days or up to 40 days of grace period with no interest, it's far better than going for a very high interest rate short-term loan. And therefore, to me, it's only going to happen as a default. Credit is going to go up. The uptake of credit is bound to be successful only if we teach and showcase the best practices, responsible lending. That is critical for credit. Now, debit is also not too far away. Just our own program, Jazaduka, has been shifted from credit instruments to debit with an overdraft. So you can actually utilize debit for, yes, your transactional needs, but then if you need to dip into the credit once in a while, just because your cash flows for a couple of months are out or whatever, that's a fantastic bridge. And the key thing for us to keep in mind as leaders is exorbitant price or cost of credit harms our ecosystem. We need to make sure that, yes, there's always concerns and risks around recovery and the costs of recovery and default rates, etc. But looking at enough data points in our history in Kenya, we can come up with a responsible lending program with an interest rate which is bearable. For example, just for this, the Farm Pass lending, we are looking at, Jazaduka lending, we've got a 3.5% interest rate per week. So, I mean, there are interest rate points which are actually manageable, and then there are interest rate points in the 40s and 50s%, which really put a lot of stress on MSMEs.
I'm sure, Dennis, you want to chime into that point.
Yeah, as I think as Shira said, people don't use, people don't use credit and cash in isolation. So it's a cycle. People have money, but as they use their money, they also want to use a little bit of credit. So the important thing really for MSMEs is to get a good balance of a business. And I think digitization and adoption of technology allows them to have the visibility of their business that then allows them to determine at which point they should use credit and at which point they should use their own cash on debit cards.
And while we're with you, Dennis, there's something quite interesting you're working on at DTB. Could you just give us more insight into it?
Yes. So at DTB, we strongly believe in partnerships. And so we have launched a new business model where we're essentially looking to partner with what we call technology-enabled businesses. Technology-enabled businesses, sometimes a lot called fintechs, but we would like to believe that it is anybody who is trying to do business using technology, including SMEs and MSMEs. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide these sort of technology-enabled businesses three main things. And this is in our ability to provide our contribution to help these businesses scale and therefore grow the economy. One, of course, is to provide them digital rails. So we are providing banking as a service within our rails to ensure that whether you're talking about payments, cards, lending, savings, investments, we're able to provide you with open banking APIs that can enable to power your business in whichever area you're trying to solve a problem. So that's number one. Number two, we are walking the journey with these fintechs or technology-enabled businesses to navigate the regulatory environment. We do take cognizance of the fact that while regulation is our bread and butter, that's what we do every day, interact with the regulators, these sort of businesses that are trying to solve specific niche problems might not have the experience to interact with regulators. So what we're saying is we will work with you. If it's licensing you need, we'll support you. But where you don't need licensing, you use our rails and we support you to go to market. Okay. And finally, we've got what we're calling a digital factory. And the essence is that we are providing an open space where these digitally enabled businesses can interact with us. So an open space where they can come, work with us, co-create new products and services. And most importantly, we've built a good space, and when these businesses are ready to launch and go to market, they can actually use this space to launch their products. So that's what we're doing, and we welcome all of you who are looking to use technology to scale to come and work with us so that we can support your growth.
Thanks for that, Dennis. Mary, there's a question here about what is KEPSA doing specifically for micro businesses, you know, the smallest of the small ones. It looks like someone here has a sentiment that we have focused largely on the small and medium-sized.
I will say, when you talk about the MSME, you're talking about the micro, the small, the medium enterprises. Yeah. And at KEPSA, we have a platform that takes care of all that. We have Juakari sector, who we work with closely with the KEPSA, and Juakari sector is dealing a lot with the micro. I'll also say that we have had several programs that we have been able to capacity build the micro. We have an SME accelerator program that we ran during the COVID year, in a lot of the enterprises that we capacity built at that time. 100 of them, we had 106, 100 of them were SMEs. And 6 of them were 100 of them were micros, and 6 of them were SMEs, were small, who we have been able then to scale to being medium. So we put our program and categorize in that platform of what is necessary for the small, so that for the micro, so that we're able to grow them to being small and grow the small into being medium. Yeah. We are also having the conversation with the government and saying, how do we define those different categories of the MSME, so that when we are dealing with the bank, when they come up with solutions, they don't come up with a solution that is one fit all. Yeah. They come up with a solution that speaks to the micro, another solution that will speak to the small, another one that will speak to the medium. Because even when you look into the business needs for these 3 categories, they are different. The micro, they may require a little money. They may not have capacity even in access of the technology that we are talking about. So we need to first lift them with the retro finances that they require, build their capacity to enable some of the technology that we are talking about. Some of them may be informal, so we may need to put more effort in formalizing them, so that they can then be able to grow to the next level. When you grow to medium, then your problems could be people problem. You don't have enough skills. How is it we can be able to capacity not just the entrepreneur, but even the businesses to be able to have the skills that they are required? When you come into medium, then you need much more money. The banks or the financiers will look at you in different ways. You're looking into accessing larger market, so the needs are different.
Yeah.
So our programs are in different way depending on wherever scale the business are. So we have space for the micro, the small, and the medium. And apart from just in the KEPSA space, we are working with all the other associations that are our members, the BMO, including the chambers, and we also take the needs that cut across. If it is the Kenya Association of Manufacturers that are also our members, so we work and we pick what needs cut across for the micro, small, and the medium enterprises in terms of advocacy for policy and the regulatory good environment for the businesses to thrive.
Kasim, let me come to you, and as I start the session for closing remarks, the question is being asked here, and Mary has actually mentioned it, that most MSMEs struggle with governance. How can we support them to overcome this challenge?
Thank you very much. Just to take you back, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce has branches in all the 47 counties after devolution. What we have been trying to do is to try to build the capacity of the business people from the grassroots level, so that as we come up, they are well aware of the governance structures. And we have partnered with many organizations in terms of trying to build their capacity. We have done it with banks, we have done it with the development partners who are actually very willing to offer resources for capacity building, especially on governance issues. How do they take care of their businesses? Are they family businesses? What kind of business are they addressing? And this has come a long way in terms of formalizing most of these businesses, because when you train them in terms of governance, how do they operate? How do they process their payments and all that? If it's a family business or a sole entrepreneur or a partnership, they get to understand how to run their businesses. And we've been doing that as a chamber for quite some time, and that gives us the strengths because with the 47 chapters in place and a governance structure which pulls them into 10 regions. If you remember the former Kenya provinces, apart from Rift Valley, which has been split into two, the South and the North Rift. I think it is something that we are working on to ensure that businesses understand their roles, who does what, when, and if the governance structure comes from the business level, then we are going to be able to achieve businesses that are sustainable in the long run.
All right. Let me come to Dennis. As you give your closing remarks, you might want to comment on the issue of governance.
Yeah, so I think SMEs require a lot of support across board. As part of our program that I spoke about, what we are working towards is to also offer solutions. So in our package of solutions is to help these SMEs understand the frameworks that are there to improve the governance overall of their businesses. So I think this is an important topic, and as DTB we continue to support SMEs as we help to solve their problems. I think in closing, from my end, I would say we are open for business. We are ready to support SMEs. Come and talk to us. We are a listening and caring bank. What we want to promise you is that we'll work with you, not just to provide you the financial services rails, but to also help you digitize, because digitization is critical for your growth. It's critical for your expansion, both within the country and outside the borders, as we've discussed. It's also critical for your own credit appraisal, and generally for you as you expand your businesses. So come and talk to us, and we grow together.
Thank you. Mary, your closing thoughts?
Apart from being an SME director at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, I also own and manage different chain of businesses. So I'm an entrepreneur.
Yes.
I run Line Plus Group, a synergy of 3 companies where we are manufacturing packaging and we also manufacturing cosmetics. So I have a brand in the market that is called Black Essential. So I live every day the life of the SME. What have I done to empower myself? I have been on the forefront of understanding and getting the information. This is why I am in the business association. This is why I've offered my service in leadership. So as I serve, I'm able to also get the first-hand information. As I open up the ways for the SMEs, for me, I'm also opening ways for other SMEs. So my call is for the SMEs to be where other people's are, so that we can be able to harmonize our voice, and we have a collaboration and one voice, so that we can be able to lobby for those policies that we are asking the government to help us, so that we can be able to scale our businesses. We can be able to embrace the opportunities that are there. We can be able to understand network and even open up opportunities, whether they are market, access to those finances that we are talking about. So SMEs come to KEPSA so that we can be able to walk this journey together.
Thank you, Mayor Ngeshu. Let me now come to the closing remarks from Sharia Ali. And Sharia, as you give us your closing remarks, there's a question here around what is the place of credit guarantee in supporting MSMEs, if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, let me answer that question first before the closing. I think credit guarantees are very important as a placeholder whenever the situation or the economy becomes really tough. It is difficult, like what happened with COVID. At the time of COVID, most of the regulators came out with credit guarantee schemes. These were, again, bridge gap measures that were needed for keeping SMEs afloat. Loan payments cannot be made when you don't have cash flows coming through. So credit guarantee schemes are a good way, it's a good tool if there is collective buy-in, all banks, all stakeholders working with the regulator together to pass through a difficult phase or a nascent phase as we try to bring SMEs up. Now, look at Kenya, 7.4 million SMEs. How many are registered? 1.5. Why is the majority not registering? Maybe we as all stakeholders need to step back and look at ourselves and say, are we making access to credit uncollateralized easy? Are we actually listening to the pain points that the SMEs are close enough? Are we willing to tailor our solutions to fit the needs of that SME's particular category, merchant category, let's say? Or are we just taking off-the-shelf solutions and putting it in front of the SME to say, hey, this is great for you, take it? No, because that won't work. And what happens at the top of the socioeconomic pyramid is we customize, right? Big corporates will customize our solutions. However, at least a sector level within MSMEs, we need to customize. And that takes effort, and that takes bold decisions. And I think Kenya is ready for those bold decisions. We all love Kenya. We all heard today the passion that came out. 7% growth is very much achievable. 7+% growth is very much achievable for this GDP and the vibrancy of this economy. And I think together, like my panelists have very rightfully pointed out, with governance, with policy making, with private and public sector partnerships, we can make this happen.
Right, many thanks. That comment by Sharia Ali takes us to the close of our conversation, where we have been focusing on MSMEs on this World MSME Day, specifically on digital payments and what uptake of the same could mean for SMEs from resilience as well as efficiency standpoint. Thank you so much to my panelists for being part of this conversation, and thank you for the questions you have shared online. We have tried as much as possible to sample them and to give them visibility, and I hope the insight from the panelists have been insightful to enable us to advance our MSME agenda as a country. Let's keep this conversation going online. We shall continue to take your feedback and to see how we can advance this conversation and have an impact on the policy and operating environment for micro, small and medium-sized businesses. News is up next, so stay tuned to NTV.